Hi everyone, this is Jessica here, and I'm here to present to you our intelligence theories. Sorry I can't be there in class today. Just had something come up and I thought I'd present to you like this, and it actually works well because it's one of our multiple intelligences is visual. Anyway, so let's get started. So what is intelligence? You've just heard about the definition of intelligence and the definition of knowledge, and the difference between the two. But did you know that intelligence is actually one of the most talked about subjects in all of psychology? And really, there's no actual standard definition of what exactly constitutes intelligence. We have theories since before the 1900s, and still we have no consensus of what intelligence actually is. Some theorists think it's general ability, while others think it's a collection or a range of skills. So there are several theories we're going to look at. So we're going to look at just 4 today. So there's Charles Spearman's general intelligence. Then we're going to look at Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence. Moving on to Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence. And then ending with Robert Sternberg's triarchic theory. So we're just going to talk about these 4 today. So let's begin with general intelligence by Charles Spearman. Charles Spearman is known as the father of classical test theory. This was proposed in the early 1900s. So Spearman proposed the idea that intelligent behavior is generated by a single, unitary quality within the human mind or brain. So basically there's one overall general intelligence, which he called the G factor. And it's this G factor which underlines and governs all of our intellectual abilities and problem-solving skills. So, how did he derive this theory? So Spearman derived this theory through a new statistical technique known as factor analysis. And this examines a number of aptitude tests and compares correlations. So he compared different IQ tests, basically. From this, Spearman saw that those who scored really high on one test scored high on the rest of the tests, and those that did poorly in one scored poorly on all of them. So from this he concluded that there was one general intelligence, or one general cognitive ability, that possibly could be measured and numerically expressed. And such derives the IQ test. He also proposed that the belief and intelligence include specific abilities, and it's these specific abilities that contribute to one overall intelligence or G factor. So these specific abilities, he said, were verbal, mechanical, spatial, and numerical, that all contribute to the general G factor, general ability of intelligence. So overall, Spearman's theory suggests that when a student performs well on one test, they have a higher G factor, a higher IQ, and thus will perform well no matter what the subject area is. So many theorists reject this interpretation of intelligence. So the funny thing is, though, that factor analysis and the measurement of one general intelligence, or using IQ tests, is still one of the most important tools in the 21st century, and this theory is dating back to the 1900s. Okay, let's move on to our second theory of intelligence. So this is from Howard Gardner, and his theory was called the multiple intelligences. This theory came out about 1983, so before most of us were born. So this is the one we'll be focusing on more today with our project and our talk. So Howard Gardner was an American psychologist, and he was actually a teacher. So he was a piano and elementary school teacher before he went back to school to get his PhD, so just a funny little anecdote there. So Gardner believed that intelligent behavior doesn't come from a general intelligence, and it can't be measured through an IQ test. So his theory suggests there are different kinds of intelligences. So he suggested there's 8 different types of intelligences. And these are based on skills or abilities that are valued within different cultures. So before I describe each one of these abilities or intelligences, Gardner derived this concept of intelligences from his experiences for working with quote-unquote extreme populations. So those are high and low IQs basically. So from these experiences, he noticed that certain cognitive abilities were often preserved even in the absence of others. For example, what he means here is that he saw that those with autistic abilities or autistic disability had extraordinary musical and mathematical abilities, even though they were severely impaired with language development and social awareness. Likewise, those with localized brain damage often demonstrated severe deficits in that area, but only that area. So, therefore he concluded there must be distinct abilities or distinct intelligences, and that one does not affect the other. Okay, let's move on and look at what these 8 intelligences are that he's talking about. So, there is bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, verbal linguistic, logical mathematical, naturalistic, interpersonal, visual spatial, and then musical. So let's talk about these one by one. Verbal linguistic intelligence. This is an intelligence that enables people to read, write, and speak well. So these are usually writers, orators, speechwriters, eloquent speakers, etc., etc. So here's just a list of ideas that us as teachers could be looking for in our students, that those might be who may be visual or linguistic. The next intelligence we're going to talk about is logical mathematical, and this encompasses logical thinking. So this might be used in chess or any deductive reasoning, for example. So it's determining or doing mathematical problems as well as scientific problem solving. So they can be inventors, scientists, mathematicians, etc., etc. So again, just some ideas to look for in those students that might be more logical or mathematical. Visual spatial. So these are people who have the ability to visualize their ideas, the big picture, or their plans. So this is usually a person who is really good at navigating around streets. I'm not one of these people. And these are also architects, so they can see their plans, filmmakers, designers, artists, surgeons, sailors, too. The next one is bodily kinesthetic. And these are people that have the ability to bodily kinesthetic. It is those that are gifted at moving their bodies and can predict movements and have very precise movements with their body. This intelligence is necessary for problem solving that requires the use of one's physical body. For example, surgeons, when they perform complex surgical procedures, or executing a series of dance steps, or even catching a fly ball. This is all bodily kinesthetic movements. So these can be athletes, soldiers, police officers, dancers, surgeons, craftspeople, etc. Just want to note, this is one of the most controversial of the intelligences of gardeners, just because people think it's more of a skill and not necessarily an intelligence, but we'll talk more about that. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is musical rhythmic. So musical rhythmic, these are people that have skills that allow them to play a tune by ear, or they can execute a musical phrase with sensitivity and grace. So these are usually musicians that have really great tone. They play music and often write music even. This is another controversial one that may be more of a skill than actually an intelligence. But again, we'll talk about the support of all these intelligences. Moving on, interpersonal is our 6th intelligence. And this is what drives social skills and things like empathy and intuition and about what motivates other people. So it's really about having the sensitivity to feelings of others, and you can communicate well. This is necessary for people like counselors, teachers, salespeople, clergy, or anyone else in the communication sector. Intrapersonal, and this is the insight into one's own self. So you have the ability to know what your feelings are, You know what your motivation is, and you can recognize that and use that for problem solving. And finally, there is naturalistic. And these are people that display skills where they're really in touch with nature, and they have a gifted ability to fit in with nature, animals, and plants, etc., such as Darwin or Jack Hanna, or really anybody that likes to be outside, likes pets, etc. So those were our 8 intelligences that make up the multiple intelligences by Howard Gardner. And the one key thing to make note of his theory was that if you were strong in one intelligence, it really has no real impact or relation to strengths of other or weaknesses in other intelligences. So basically, to make sure you remember that if you're strong in one, they're all distinct, so it doesn't mean you're strong in others. Gardner also believed that everyone is born with these 8 intelligences, but some might be more pronounced than others, and you can develop them. So basically, everyone is intelligent in their own way. Moving on to emotional intelligence. This was theorized by Daniel Goleman in 1995 and 99, so fairly recent. And it's actually a lot different than the other 2 theories we've been talking about, because it goes beyond the traditional intelligence types. It's not cognitive. He suggested that instead of IQ, we have to think about EQ, or what he called emotional intelligence. So it's this EQ, or emotional intelligence, that really drives how you perform it and how you do your skills in a job. So it's really important to concentrate on how we communicate with each other emotionally and how that allows us to be successful in life. So Holman proposed that EI, or EQ as he calls it, emotional intelligence, is the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and control one's own emotions, the emotions of others, and of groups, in order to understand and control them and use them to better your skills, or make you more successful, or others more successful. So his theory was based on 5 individual components that all work together. So the first component is awareness of yourself, so self-awareness. This is the ability to recognize and understand personal moods and emotions and drives. Self-regulation is the ability to control or redirect your disruptive impulses and moods, and the ability to suspend judgment, so basically to think before you act, self-regulation. Social skills, pretty self-explanatory, but basically proficiency in managing relationships and building networks, and an ability to find common ground and build rapport with people. Empathy is the 4th one. So this is the ability to notice the feelings of others. It's the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people, and you treat people according to their emotional reactions or their feelings. So this is a hallmark, includes cross-cultural sensitivity, service clients, customers. You all have to have some sort of empathy. And the 5th one in his emotional intelligence theory is motivation. So personal motivation. This is a passion to work for internal reasons that go beyond money and status. Motivation is an internal vision of what's important in life. You have a joy of doing something, a curiosity for learning. So it's your propensity to pursue goals with energy and persistence. So to Goleman, emotional competencies are not innate talents, but they must be learned. He believes that you're born with a general emotional intelligence, or EQ, but you have to develop it further. So it's the working together of all of these 5 emotional intelligences that will determine how successful you will be. So, interesting enough, this theory is widely used in the business community. They believe that the smarts, or the IQ intelligence, will get you the job, and it'll get you into school. But it's really, if you think about it, your emotional intelligence that will determine how well you do at performing your tasks. and it's how you're going to get through that workday.